Welcome back. Now, as the country's Trade and Industry Ministry moves forward with measures to support local exporters after missing President Trump's tariff deadline, the 30% tariff will still have a dire impact on the economy. Government, in the meantime, says that it continues to negotiate a mutually beneficial trade deal with the U.S. Just how should the state move forward in securing a trade deal? Peter Attard-Montalto from Krutham joins us with his thoughts. Peter, thanks so much for your time this afternoon. Now, what we do know is those tariffs will come into effect before the end of the week. DTIC and the Department of International Relations held a briefing today, taking us through some of their response measures, and we'll get into your thoughts around the ongoing negotiations. But what have you made of, the economic response package, as well as the option to diversify markets? I spoke to a member of the citrus industry last week, and, he mentioned that diverting products to other markets isn't as easy as the DTIC makes it out to be. So just your thoughts around that.
Good afternoon. Well, this is a hugely complex thing to change export countries. This doesn't happen overnight. If we take the agriculture industry, you mentioned citrus, you maybe can line things up for next year, say the middle of next year and through another harvest cycle, but you don't just ring up a telephone number at DTIC and magically export your stuff elsewhere. DTIC is also talking about a number of pots of funds to support industry. This is all tiny. The total tariff impact is going to be just in agriculture and cars, I should say, is going to be about 8 billion rands. Beyond that, in the rest of the economy, much, much larger. There is not going to be money from National Treasury to support this. Treasury will insist that DTIC reallocates money from elsewhere in its existing budgets. That's not really possible. So all the discussion this morning of some funds from various pots, whether it's from SMEs or for others, is really going to be a drop in the ocean. And I think South Africa is basically going to have to feel the full force of this. The same on AfCFTA. The AfCFTA is a great, marvelous long-term thing. It is doesn't actually exist at the moment as a meaningful, thing that you can export into. It's slowly undertaking the process of dropping tariff and non-tariff trade barriers, but certainly is not there yet to suddenly start exporting a meaningful order of magnitude more than we currently see at the moment.
So, as mentioned, government says the negotiations are ongoing with the U.S. I wonder what sort of bargaining power, if any, we have, if we have any bargaining power, Peter. Post the meeting at the Oval Office in May, it seemed like things were somewhat coming together, were somewhat getting better, but it seems like we're back at square one. We still don't even have an ambassador in the U.S.
So, I think we need to correct one thing. Our view from speaking to a lot of people in the US and in DC is that there were no substantive negotiations that occurred. And I think that came out in the press conference this morning. South Africa was requested to send certain, details of what it might offer. But there was never a sit down, as far as we understand it, line by line negotiation that you would expect that, for instance, the UK did, that Japan, that the EU and others did. In those cases, you had large teams of negotiators sitting in rooms for days on end, going literally line by line. That did not happen in the case of South Africa. And I think we need to understand that. And I think fundamentally, South Africa's offer never really moved the dial. And this is the problem. The issue, for instance, on agriculture, there's been a list that's been basically unchanged of tariff and non-tariff issues like phytosanitary issues that had basically been unchanged for 20 years. And South Africa didn't meet basically what USTR was asking for, in particular around comparative tariffs, say, versus the EU on chicken, things like that. And then some of these offers that were made, for instance, on LNG were never a real starter in our view. It was not possible for South Africa it is not possible for South Africa to import LNG particularly quickly because of the lack of import infrastructure as well. So the whole thing, I think, was not quite what it's made out to be. And I think that means that actually, getting to a deal from here is still going to be exceptionally long and complicated.
Let's talk about how South Africa should then position itself moving forward. It's clear that Trump is willing to seal these trade deals, but, on his own terms. We can even touch on, I guess, the leaders in the top spots and whether they've been doing enough to try and secure a deal with the Trump administration.
So we don't think there will be a deal for a number of reasons. First of all, South Africa is not willing to go far enough in terms of a lot of those issues, particularly around non-tariff issues, whether that's on the agriculture side, whether that's on wider things like the copyright bill, the private security bill, all those sorts of things which are seen and mentioned in USTR reports that have been coming out for a number of years. And that's all before you get to the wider issues around DEE, those sorts of issues, or the ability to add on top, things like this discussion around gas imports and those sort of large offers. I think we need to consider this as a multi-stage sort of negotiation. You have to meet the core USTR terms first, before then you consider those wider add-ons, and then you consider the broad foreign policy sort of stance on those sorts of issues. That multi-layer process, we think, is likely to fail on all fronts, and as a result, you're going to need to, see some kind of mitigating action. I said over time. South Africa can bounce back from this certainly over time, but it is going to take a while. I think, having taken a step back, though, we need to be a bit cautious about too much doom and gloom on this. We agree with the SARB in terms of shaving off about 0.3 from GDP this year. Right, that's not great, right, but it's not the end of the world for sure, and we just do need to keep it in that context.
So moving forward, we just have to stomach the implications that might hit us, and I guess perhaps look at diversifying into other markets as that deal might not be reached?
Exactly. I think then we need realism on the time to diversify. It's going to take a year or more for most people to be able to undertake that kind of thing. But we need to remember that the rest of the world is doing this as well. One issue we're watching, for instance, a lot is Chinese dumping into Africa. A lot of consumer goods that would have gone to the USA are now going to be dumped probably at a lower price into Africa and elsewhere. And so this really is a competitive landscape. And again, I think the sort of notion that's coming out of DTIC that sort of magically you just choose somewhere else to export, that you're going to be doing that in competition with whatever, citrus producers, other goods producers from all over the world.
All right, Peter, let's leave it there. Thanks so much for your time and sharing your insights with us this afternoon. That was Peter Attard-Montalto from Krutham.